It's very nice to be here. I did prepare a presentation about what you can do to make sure that recruiters love your job boards. Even though we do live in a sourcing era, I would say it came to Poland, where I train a lot of the time. A little bit later, we first looked into employer branding, but we don't know how to measure the results of that. And sourcing is very nice because you know more or less where you're at. But before I move on to this, I just wanted to mention why I'm here. That may be a question some of you are asking yourselves. So I work with recruiters, and basically what I do is I teach them to reach more candidates. Now, most companies will assume it's sourcing that will help them do this. Very often I disagree, because sourcing is not a silver bullet. It's just one of the solutions available to them. And in fact, in a lot of industries, sourcing is not really going to help anyone. Sourcing is difficult, it's not the easiest thing to do, and it's certainly not always the best option. I'm mentioning this because it will come up in the presentation as well. Now, I also run a community for recruiters. I run that back in Poland. I actually started it from London, but it is back in Poland, and we have around 4,000 people in that community right now. We do meetups, but it also functions as a sort of support group for recruiters. And this helps me to understand what they want, what they need on a daily basis, and kind of see the trends in there. And in terms of my background, I started in sourcing. So I was hired to find candidates online using social media. And the reason my manager decided I'm qualified to do that is because I'm a millennial. So clearly I know all about social media. So there you go. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not know what LinkedIn was. I was barely using Facebook, and I had to learn all of that by myself. And this also will explain the attitude a lot of sourcers and recruiters have towards sourcing. So I'm going to mention that a little bit later on as well. But I'm curious, and looking at the room, I can imagine there's some people who do remember that. But does anyone remember times before sourcing was a thing? Because I'll tell you, most recruiters don't. And recruiters have a very short memory. There's also been a huge focus on sourcing candidates in the past years, and there's been a lot of talk about how passive candidates are better than active candidates, and you can't find passive candidates on job boards, so you have to go to places where you can find people who are not looking because these people are just so much better. Obviously, that's fake news. It's very often the same person just a week earlier, you know, because they haven't made that decision to look for something new yet. But recruiters do need to talk to people who are willing to move. So the truly passive candidates, no one really wants them because they're not going to end up taking another job. But this impacts the way recruiters are and the way they behave, because most recruiters will run a search on LinkedIn as the very first thing they do after learning that there's a job requisition. And it's horrible because very often they'll do this before even asking themselves, what is this job all about? They'll just sit in front of LinkedIn and look for people. And this happens, I believe, because it gives them this false security, this comfort that they might be able to find someone. There is someone on the market who could do that job, and they feel like they have a real chance of finding that person. Now, the funny thing for me is that most recruiters look at LinkedIn before they run a search in their own database, where they have phone numbers and email addresses. And yet they decide to contact people through LinkedIn, where it's so much easier to get rejected. And this, I think, also links with the way we approach recruitment processes. Most recruiters are not very proud of their jobs They're not very proud of what they do and how they deal with candidates because we allow ourselves as recruiters to have way more than 20 requisitions on at any one time, which is ridiculous. We can't treat people well, so we kind of make the assumption that if someone is in our database, we've heard that person already. So it's much better to go to LinkedIn because there's fresh blood out there. The market is limited, so obviously there's going to have to be a shift in that mindset. But this does impact the way recruiters are and the way they think about the process and finding candidates. Now, if you're gonna make recruiters love you, if you're gonna make them think about you and the job boards as the first step of the process, or the first step of the search process itself, because there's a lot that should come before that, there is something you need to understand, and understanding that what recruiters want will help you create a product that is way better than anything else. It's not very complicated understanding what they want if you spend enough time with them. The one trick I would say is don't try to ask them what they want. They won't tell you the truth. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because frankly, they have no idea. I mean, there's a big disconnect that I see in terms of what they say, the declarations and the truth, and very often I find out about it way too late, and so will you. So I think this is something that I've been learning about for the past few years. I'm not going to shock you here, I don't think. What recruiters want is candidates. Simple, right? But we sometimes forget about it, and the truth is, a lot of the time, the reason why recruiters don't think of job boards as their main solution for recruiting is because they don't trust that they're going to get candidates from posting a job. In fact, very often I talk to my clients and I ask them, okay, so I see you're posting jobs. Are you getting any applications? No. Okay, so can you walk me through why you're posting your jobs? Oh, it's for employer branding reasons. Then comes the question of, okay, in that case, why are they so horribly written? Because I'm sure that doesn't help your brand, but that's a different question altogether, right? But a lot of recruiters, even though their bosses pay for the job ads, they don't trust that they're going to get anywhere with it. So they don't invest time in writing a proper ad. They just put whatever they have on the job board. They don't get candidates, and it's sort of a vicious cycle, isn't it? So we're gonna take a look at what you can do to change that. But before we do, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And this is something that I think is extremely important for all of you to know. And that is recruiters hate sourcing. Or I put it way more diplomatically on the slides, sourcing is not their favorite task. A lot of people don't like sourcing. You know what, they don't get the right training. And it's very hard to like something when you're basically destined to fail. And this is something you can use because recruiters are destined to fail when it comes to sourcing. And in fact, it's just something that most people will not enjoy. It goes back to having that sort of hunter mentality. If you really like being rejected on a daily basis, then sure, sourcing is for you, right? Because most people are going to say no, thank you, when you reach out to them. A lot of recruiters don't like this. And even me, when I started in sourcing, in fact, my first role, it wasn't really a sourcing role. I was dealing with applicants in my very first role for 3 months, and that was supposed to give me the confidence to call people up and talk to them. The idea behind this was, because they were applicants, I was calling people who wanted to talk to me, which is the sort of feeling that most recruiters don't have when they source candidates. And this is the problem with LinkedIn as well. Even though it feels slightly less hurtful to be rejected on LinkedIn because, you know, it's done in writing, it's still not great. So LinkedIn is not the dream for a lot of recruiters. And with the community I run, I asked, we did a survey, we had 800 responses from Poland, It was very much focused on the Poland market, but I think it's quite similar everywhere else as well. We asked, how long do you plan on working in a role that involves sourcing? And only 31% said that they want to remain in sourcing. Now, we don't really see a lot of specialized sourcers in Poland. I would say it's around 2%, and it's mostly RPO roles, so they're a little bit tricky because of the business model as well. We mostly see recruiters who source, so the sourcing recruiter, that is the job title, I would say. And people mostly want to move into HR. Because they just don't want to have to source candidates anymore. And this is the dream in Poland, you know, become a business partner. Not a real business partner, I mean the job title, you know, because that means that you end up sitting in meetings all day long as opposed to having to speak to candidates who don't want to speak to you. So now that we know this, recruiters want candidates. They don't want to have to source. It seems that it is in fact the perfect timing for job boards to thrive. But we have to learn a little bit better about how to make sure recruiters know this, because they seem oblivious to this fact. So I would say, let's take a hint from the hospitality industry. I was once into this weird reality show about running bars, and something very interesting that I learned from that is that apparently if you run a bar, your main focus is on attracting women. It's the women who choose a bar. They will make or break your business. Why? Because men are just gonna go wherever women are, right? They're not gonna end up sitting in a pub with just their friends. Most of the time they do wanna meet women, so they will follow women wherever they are. As long as women like your bar, you're gonna be really successful. And this is something you have to understand because it's a great metaphor for your business as well. As long as you have candidates visiting your job board, you'll have recruiters following them. This is all they want, right? So the only way to show recruiters that they can't ignore you is to make sure and prove to them you have candidates. And I'm not just talking about the number of impressions and people who are visiting your website. I'm talking about candidates for those recruiters. So people who will end up applying for those jobs. So how do you do this? I have a couple of tips here. First of all, and this is actually, I honestly have one example of a job board that I think in a lot of ways works really well. I stuck to examples back from Poland. That way I don't, get mixed up in, I won't say the wrong thing, so to speak. And I have this example from Just Join IT. It's a Polish job board for developers, obviously a very interesting area. And it's an area that's also interesting because that is where sourcing is super easy. Developers are online. It's kind of their job, you know. They are online, it's easy to find most of them, and no one really trusts that they're gonna apply to your ad. So it's interesting that this one job board was able to make such a huge success of their activity. And the reason they did it is because they understood their target audience, and their target audience was obviously the candidates first. They made friends with their target audience. And what you see here, you're going to be able to watch the video when you get the slides later. I don't trust technology, so didn't want to play it right now. But what you see right here is a IT Olympics. Basically, it was a one-day event where you had many made-up sports disciplines like throwing a computer and whatever this is. I mean, it's the lifting weights and running around with them. It's computers. It looked very funny in the video, and frankly, it looks ridiculous to a lot of people outside of the IT industry. And I'm not sure I would have the bravery to try something like this, but this is something that they did a year or 2 years into their existence. So they already understood their target audience very well. And because they do all of these things, they end up delivering value to their target audience, to the candidates, every single day. And that's why people end up visiting their job board very often, not just when they're looking for their job, because they will see the job updates. They have a lot of communication channels that they use to further promote the jobs that are advertised on the website. And between this and also creating a platform that's slightly different, so what they do is you have a map of Poland, and you basically can see jobs located on the map. So you can see what the commute is going to be like, if it's a location that you really want. They were able to become really successful. Now, this is the first step, obviously. You have to deliver value every day, and you don't necessarily have to come up with Olympics. You don't rent a stadium just now. There's easier ways to do this, right? And the first thing, and I swear these are basics, and you probably know all of this, but it's one thing to know it and a slightly different thing to act on it. The very first thing is industry news. If you look at how people interact with newspapers, I mean, you'd think they would be completely obsolete by now, but we do want to get our industry news, our news in general, from somewhere, and we're going to end up reading a newspaper or visiting a portal where we can find all of our news, or we're going to watch a news channel. You know, people who want to develop, they're going to look for industry news. They're going to want to understand how they can build their career. These are the types of people that you want to cater to, because these are the types of people that LinkedIn claims to have on the platform at all times. And it's not necessarily always true, but there's a lot of people that are not on LinkedIn. They could be getting their industry news from you. And in fact, it is, I would argue, for a lot of people a little bit more interesting, because you don't just get news from your network, but in fact a reliable source. So if you become that reliable source of information, you'll be the first point, the first place where they go to look to learn what's happening. New skills, and I think you had that question about whether people would use learning platforms to find their new jobs. The question is, why would you not work with learning platforms to help your candidates stand out? And I mean, they could very easily come to you when they're looking to learn a new skill. Say you have an information in part of your industry news article, you say this is one of the skills that's going to be really valuable on the market within the next 5 years. By the way, we can help you get that skill. Then a wonderful thing happens, because people start going to your platform when they're looking to learn something new. You're going to be the source of information about what is it that I should be learning. It doesn't have to be in the next 5 years. It could be like right now, this is the skill that companies are looking for. So check out some of the courses that are available. And you could very well end up, if not creating your own learning platform, you don't always have to create your own stuff. You could be working with existing learning platforms to cater to those needs. And then just make it easy for someone to, in their profile, make sure that they can, check, I have that skill, I just did this course on this learning platform, here's what I learned. So make sure that you help your candidates stand out with the new skills that they get with your help. And finally, market insights. So again, it's just very important for people who are job seekers, who could be job seekers, to understand what's happening on the market. And I tend to tell agency recruiters that this is a great opportunity for them, but you can capitalize on the distrust towards agency recruiters as well. The situation isn't that great right now, and a lot of candidates are not sure that their recruiter will tell them the truth about the market. So you could be that source of information as well. They could, at the very least, double check what a recruiter has told them already. So what type of information are candidates going to be looking for? Well, definitely information about salaries they could be looking for, understanding where jobs are going to be created, what are some of the good locations. And if you look at the impact of gig economy on your work, this is great news for you because it means people are going to be looking for their next job way more often. And they're not necessarily just going to be using professional platforms for that. There is a reason to use job boards. So that's some of the easy options for you to consider. Now, you should also remember that you have to communicate with candidates and with recruiters where they are. So I understand that you have a platform. I understand it's your space online, but you have to remember to look outside of that as well. And again, I'll go back to the example I gave before. Just Join IT, what they do is they are very present on the Polish equivalent of Reddit. We have a Polish equivalent for everything. So it's a platform that recruiters hate. They appreciate that there's a lot of developers there, and they would probably like to be able to source them. And technically, there are ways to do that, but most of them are reluctant to do it because they don't understand the platform well enough. So what Just Join IT did was they made sure they understand it well enough, and some of the developers that are behind the platform were actually helping shape that strategy of how to approach candidates there. And they made sure that they're always visible there. Now, what this gives you is you can tell a recruiter, listen, don't worry about all of those niche platforms that your candidates could be using. We're already there. We're going to promote your job there. We're going to make sure that people from those platforms come see your jobs on our platform so that this way you can focus on all of the other tasks you have in front of you. And they don't have to use them to source. You could use Facebook, which used to be a good place to source candidates. It no longer is. The technology's changed, so the only way really to get candidates from Facebook is advertising. You can use Instagram, you can use Twitter, but perhaps there's something else that you could be using. And in fact, there's a lot of offline sources that you should be considering as well. Job fairs, you should be there. You know, if not your clients, then you could be there to represent the interest of all of your clients. Why not? And you should be educating recruiters about what candidates want. Now, this is information from the US. I would argue some of this would look a little bit different in surveys in Poland, probably a little bit different in surveys in the UK, but the top stays more or less the same, right? People, what they want from a job ad is they want to understand the salary, because recruitment processes are long and difficult to go through, let's say it nicely, and they want to make sure that they're investing their time properly, especially if they have to send in their CV. That's like their entire life history and all of the sensitive information they have, and they're sending it through to someone, and they don't even know if the salary is anywhere near what they're already earning, right? They need to understand the benefits of the job, and not just the benefits that the Friday lunch or, I don't know, fruit at the office, but also the actual benefits of the role to their career. They want to know what the location is. And this is an interesting point someone made to me. I asked recruiters in my community, what's missing for you in the job boards that you're using? And they said, well, with some of the job boards, you have to pick one location. But more and more, we're flexible on location, so I would want to pick 5 locations where the candidate can be based, or in fact, sometimes they can work remotely. So I want to make sure that this is very clear very early on, because otherwise people apply from only one location, or they apply from all over Poland just in case there's some flexibility when there isn't. So again, this is a tiny tweak to the way we advertise jobs, but it changes a lot for people. Commute time, obviously, that's very subjective, but employer reviews. That's something that people want to see as well. And this is why LinkedIn is so popular right now. It's because it capitalizes on social proof. And because employers are not that trusted themselves, we want to hear from employees about whether they like the job or not and what the job is about. So if you just gave people the chance to include an employee review in their job ad and make it look nice, then that's a huge change for the employers and for recruiters. Now, you have to educate recruiters about what candidates want. You also have to help them deliver it. Because they will find a lot of excuses to not do it. So first of all, and I'm not sure if this happens, I know it happens for some job boards, perhaps not for all of them, but candidates should get a reply for every single application, and I can't believe we're still having that discussion. And some companies say, well, technically we give feedback to everyone because we say we're only going to contact the selected candidates. So if they don't hear from us, then that means they're not selected. That's feedback. It's horrible. It's as if you went on a date and actually told someone, in their face, I'm only going to call you if I like the first date, but I'm not going to tell you if I liked it. But if you don't ever hear back from me again, you aren't that great. We don't tell people that because it's not nice. And it's not okay to ghost candidates either, right? They end up ghosting us in the process because we failed to deliver on that first contact. And the truth is, every single recruiter should be contacting every person they reject. So if you see that, if it's possible that recruiters are not even reviewing an application that you sent over, perhaps that sort of information should come from you. We can see that we haven't seen any activity on your application in the last week. Maybe you should nudge recruiters to act on it, but if not, perhaps you should be contacting candidates even to say, we can see that there's been no activity on your application in the past week. We encourage you to look at some of the other job ads that are on the platform. Perhaps that should be the case. If recruiters fail to do their job well, that reflects badly on you as well as everyone else. And there's a couple of job boards in Poland that I know send out this automatic reply just to say your application has been successfully delivered to the company. So at least there's something, at least they know a little bit. There's a couple of companies in Poland where I applied, and that was like 5 years ago, fingers crossed, because I still might be in the process, you never know. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? And you have to remember as well, customer expectations impact our candidate expectations. If you order something online and they told you, we're only going to send you an email if we decide that we're going to ship this to you. If it's not in our store, we're just never going to contact you. That would never happen. It sounds ridiculous even when I say it, right? So you have to make sure that you deliver on those kinds of expectations. Now, this is delicate. I would argue that most job ads available online are, they're horrible. Let me just say that. The truth is, they don't tell the candidate anything, and this is why I don't believe in matching of candidates to job ads. Because those job ads, let's be honest, most recruiters don't write their own. They just copy and paste something they found. This is something one of my hiring managers did to me once. They copied an ad from a different company, sent it to me, and they said, can you advertise this? And I said, this has someone else's name on it. What's happening? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, sure, adjust it for our company. I'm like, okay, but are we sure we're looking for the same exact person? Well, the job title is right, so it has to be the same job. This happens a lot, and recruiters don't get a proper briefing a lot of the time, so they don't even know how to write a proper job ad because they don't have the right information. And even if they did, they don't have the copywriting skills to do it. I myself went to a copywriting course recently, and you know what? I thought I was doing really well. And now I know that this was, in fact, an illusion. Writing is hard, and writing things that will attract someone's attention, even harder. So it really should be something that you offer. In fact, you know, if I were to imagine an ideal partner for me as a job board, I would say, let me advertise one job, and then if I don't get any relevant applications, you should be the one to come to me to say, we can see that this ad did not have the right interest. We would like to offer you 30 minutes on the phone with one of our copywriters. They're here to help you. Then advertise the role again and compare the results. You should be doing that, because the truth is recruiters really need it, and they're never going to convince their companies to invest in it. Recruiters are very bad at convincing companies of anything, really. So this is something that is completely within your domain. And better job ad templates. I've heard that apparently some job boards will say, use your keywords 3 to 4 times in order for your job to be found. Now, I don't want to, point fingers or anything, but this is horrible advice, because you don't know what candidates are using as their keyword. You don't know that. And it's the same for CVs. If a candidate uses a keyword 5 times in their CV, does that change anything? Do we know for sure that the recruiter is going to use that keyword to find the candidate? No. So it might not change anything, but it does the text look worse. And in fact, using storytelling, way more engaging and way worse for the SEO. The SEO should be something that you're working on. And in fact, if people are already coming to your platform, then why would anyone even care if the job posted on your job board appears in Google at all, right? I mean, your job board should appear in Google, but it should also be the first place where people go. You don't just want your clients to get traffic from Google. You want them to get traffic from candidates who are already on your platform. And finally, integration with the ATS systems, or in fact, any other technology that recruiters are using to manage their candidates, because, and I can't believe this is still happening in the 21st century, sometimes recruiters will tell me they get CVs from a job board into their email inbox. Why? That is, I'm not sure why that happens. Very often it's because they don't use the ATS properly. It's not even the job board. Very often I discover it's completely possible to integrate the two. They just didn't know. So you should be insisting on that. You should be making sure that you don't look at how to deliver better reports for your clients, because the truth is they shouldn't be caring about that. They should be getting those reports from their ATS to see a whole picture, not just information from you yourself. And if you make recruiters look good, you're going to be their #1 choice. That's all they want. They want to look professional, and they want to feel good about their jobs, which they don't necessarily do right now. So, what do they need? We talked about what they want, and it's candidates. What do they need? First of all, relevant applications. No one cares if they get 200 applications if they're not relevant, because that just means they have more work. Second of all, statistics that will allow them to optimize their efforts. And if that means that you should tell your client, listen, there's no point in advertising this job with us, then you should do that, because you want to be a trusted partner. You don't just want them to spend money with you. You want them to do it in a way that will show them results, because then they're going to really trust you when you advise them to spend it on another service that you are able to offer them. And they want quick help answering questions. And you have to make sure that they know that they can get that help answering questions. And perhaps you should even have a copywriter, available to your clients. Like I said, this is something that they often need. And perhaps you should be telling them, listen, we offer you a premium service. You get to speak to a copywriter whenever you need to. You can do that through chat, you can do that through phone. The technology is there. Perhaps you need a copywriter, but that's certainly easy to find as well. You can't go wrong if you do the basics right, and I know the market's changing, but I also think that a lot of our needs stay the same. And recruiters certainly need the same thing they always needed. They need to deliver candidates to companies that are going to get hired. And this is all you really need to deliver to them, to help them. And if you were able to provide case studies to show, listen, we've had a client who was able to get 10 applications, but in fact, from those 10 applications, every single one was relevant. They invited all of those people to take part in the recruitment process, and they didn't just hire the one person that they wanted to hire. They created another job for another candidate they really liked. I've heard of a story exactly like this. I know this happens. So if you were able to create those case studies and share them with your clients, I'm sure they would be happy to work with you. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't go on too long. Thanks.